Hello, everyone. Welcome. Um, Mark Howells with Dakota Ridge Marketing. And before I jump into anything and introduce Mike, I just want to apologize if you were ready to go, all excited last week. It seems that all of the internet in Colorado Springs went down across the board. So my apologies for that, but I'm glad that you're here today. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. I know we've had a lot of back and forth leading up to this, and so I'm excited to kind of jump into this topic today with you. If you don't mind, I'll just do a quick intro of Dakota Ridge, and then I'll throw it over to you at Iceberg. So basically, we are an IT marketing company, and that's everything from enhanced content, video, webinars, all that area into SEO side of things, and we focus on growth. So we're full front to back strategy up through aligning with your sales team. And with that said, I'm so excited to introduce you guys to Mike, and I will totally butcher your last name, so I'll let you say that.
It's okay.
If you don't mind giving an intro of who you are and who Iceberg Cyber is, that would be great.
Right on. Hey, everyone. Michael Bakaic from Iceberg Cyber. It's a startup company here in Toronto. Our main thing is trying to use cybersecurity as part of your sales process. So we got this prospect-facing tool called the Cyber Score. You make Cyber Score cards, use that to get the conversation started, and then we follow it up with 24-hour cyber audits and cybersecurity monitoring that you can use to deliver real security value to new clients.
Nice. And our topic today, when I first reached out, it was, what do you guys do? Obviously, wanted to learn about you and really understand more about what you do, but also how can you help MSPs and also do it as a chat, with our side from the marketing perspective. Really centered around value-based offers. And this is something that I know we've seen, especially on the cyber side, is, with a knowledge gap normally between MSPs and MSSPs and their clients, huge knowledge gap. Why do we need this? Oh yeah, there's this compliance thing, regulation, everything like that. I wanted to just kick off with really, how did you get started? What inspired you to focus on, simplifying prospecting and vulnerability monitoring for MSPs?
I think this story will resonate with a lot of people on the call because I'm an engineer. So the start of this journey was a very technical one. I I like computers. I think on the call, all of us like computers. I like computers. Cybersecurity is very fun challenge. It's a mental game of cat and mouse. It's like chess, where most of the time only one person knows that they're playing, but it's like a game of chess, right? So Iceberg Cyber really started with the technical component of risk reconnaissance, vulnerability monitoring, threat scanning. That's the tech that we do. Over the last year, it's morphed into a prospecting tool because that's really where the rubber hits the road. We all have these cool, fun tech tools. There's tons of vendors making cool tech tools. And yet, MSPs are still struggling to get the value to the client. My goal is to help small business owners be secure so they don't end up plastered on the news as someone that's lost their business. That's all our goal. In order to do that, we also need to close a sales contract. The MSP needs to get paid to do it.
Right.
And that big jump is what we're focused on now. Like, help the small business owner appreciate the value in working with a professional IT company so the MSP can get in there and do their great job and keep the businesses secure so that everyone wins. And that's the sort of confluence we're working in now, putting cybersecurity in the forefront of that conversation to get the juices flowing.
Yeah. I love that you made that jump because honestly, I haven't seen that a ton where it's like, tech tools, we're handling this. Yes. But guess what? You need the clients to actually align and use, be able to use those tools in a way. So that's great
Totally.
that you do that.
Because otherwise, we just be selling another tool that an MSP has to use and pay for.
Mm.
And because I love sales and I got like the sales books over this shoulder and stuff, I mean, that's only part of the puzzle. I can sell stuff to an MSP, but if they're just using it internally and they don't perceive that their clients are paying them for it, Then I'm on their ledger as an expense. I don't want to be there.
Yeah.
I don't want to be denoted as an expense. I want to be the partner that's helping the MSP get more money. And the tool is part of it, and the training is part of that, and the support is part of that, so that we can get the client secure, get the client to pay you for it, get the MSP to do the work. Everyone wins.
Yeah. I love that. We're definitely in alignment there, trying to be seen as a revenue driver as opposed to a cost center. It's just,
Well, that's how you work as a partnership, right? And I
yeah.
think, like, we were just talking about this in the prep for the call. We're going to tee up that question later, but it's part of, like, we feel responsibility in the relationship that we have with our MSP clients, because it's not one directional.
Right.
I'm not selling something at you and you buy it from me. I'm trying to help you get to the end goal of making more money, because if you get paid by the small business, they get security, and then you get paid, and then you get happy, and then you get to give them more security, and I'm all part of the process.
Yeah.
And I think that is me embodying the value-based offer that we're going to talk about today, right? Because that's us taking ownership of your whole project here. That's your whole objective, not just, hey, I got to find someone that I can convince to go to my Stripe payment link.
Click here and we're done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do want to remind everyone just real quick at this point, if you have questions, comments, etc., just throw them right into the LinkedIn comments right there, and we'll see them and potentially tackle them as we go. Before we jump into some pieces about value-based offers, just kind of getting a landscape, right? Let's lay the groundwork, if you will. What do you feel is the current landscape for MSPs offering cyber services right now?
I'm very optimistic. I think the outlook is great, because there's demand being generated in unison with the MSP's efforts.
Mhm.
For better or worse, the news is doing a great job at talking about cybersecurity and cyber threats and cyber attacks. Oftentimes, it's with giant companies like CDK. CDK is a CRM, inventory, ERP sort of whole megalith package for car dealerships.
Yep.
Probably for many MSPs on the call, their dealership clients were touched by this over the last month. CDK had an incident. They were ransomware attack, taken down for like 3 weeks, 3 full weeks, 0 services. The news did a great job of talking about that, because, like, they have 15,000 car dealership clients. That's
Yeah.
huge. That's a giant portion of the economy. So, like, it's on CNN, it's on New York Times. That means cybersecurity's slowly becoming a dinner table conversation. Slowly.
Yeah.
It would be great if it was right now, but it's getting more and more discussed, which is good, because that means the small business owners that we all want to talk to are being introduced to it. So when we bring it up with them, they're more apt to ask questions and be curious and find out what it means to them. And, that can be your seed as part of the sales process. So I think the opportunity is huge.
Yeah.
Another way to look at it is, there's a lot of criminal activity going on with cybersecurity. Like, cybercrime is a very, very lucrative business for criminals. It's very
Yeah.
lucrative.
Unfortunately.
Sooner or later, law enforcement will catch up with them. But in the short term, it's a very lucrative business, especially if you live in certain areas where the FBI can't get you. That means that we have a great opportunity to keep people safe. So, there's a cat and mouse game here, and we're trying to make sure that the cats don't eat all the mice. Sometimes the mice are unaware that there are cats. But we have the specific training, we have the knowledge, we check the news. Accountants don't check the news that we check, but we call the accountant and say, hey, listen, something's going on. Let me talk to you about it. If you're curious, I give you more information. And
Yeah.
that's where the conversation starts. So I think the opportunity is out there, and you hear it, like, throughout all the channel publications. They're talking about how this is a great opportunity. It is, because it's a new theme to talk about. It's like saying AI is a great opportunity. It is, because if you have a topic that people want to talk about, that's your in. The sales process all starts with something mutually agreeable to talk about. So you're going to
Yep.
talk about this, and you use it. Sometimes you're going to use cybersecurity to just talk about basics. Sometimes you use it to talk about, like, serious defense. Sometimes you talk about compliance, but it's a conversation starter that more people are warming up to, and that's why it's a great opportunity.
Yeah. And we've definitely kind of jumped on the back of some of that news aspect. And we try, internally to keep our finger on the pulse, but definitely our clients as MSPs tell us, like with the CDK breach, it was our clients, had those auto dealers. We were like, holy crap, this is happening. They're, on the front lines of that and letting us know. And then we use it on the marketing perspective to kind of go full circle and say, hey, this has happened, et cetera. Be aware of this. You may need these services, et cetera, and kind of go from there with it. The other piece I was thinking was just, compliance and regulations are being pushed so much now by different government entities, et cetera, that's pushing the envelope as well on the cyber side. I always like looking up, data and everything. That's where I go is what's the analytics or the data behind it. And HelpNet Security is showing 78% of MSPs list cybersecurity as a revenue driver. Kaseya is showing it at 73%. But pretty much what we're saying, landscape wise, is it's an
Unbiased.
opportunity, it's a driver of revenue. So
I think it would be fantastic if we could get some small businesses to do a similar type of survey. It's a little bit of a loaded statement for Kaseya to say that because it's a biased opinion. It would be great to hear it from small business. You get some studies where they're talked to, like, CEOs from big, like the CPA association in one of the states, right? And they talk about cybersecurity is on their mind. That's great. That's really who we want to hear from, is because those are the people that matter on the demand side.
yeah.
If the more we can get it to be a dinner time conversation, the more a small business owner will realize this is part of running a business now. This is part of my hygiene. Just like I've got an accountant and then I got a lawyer to handle stuff, I got to have someone on IT to make sure that we're doing our duty of care, both to our employees, to our operations, and to our clients.
Yeah.
The CDK thing was a great eye-opening example for dealerships because they had to roll back to like paper, pens, the carbon copy credit card stuff.
Right.
It's eye-opening because if you were a car salesperson, like not even in management, you're just a car salesperson. You wake up one day and you can't log into the portal to do financing, check inventory, order cars, do financial background checks. That's a wake up to say, well, yeah, the dealership really relies on IT for all of our functionality. So that's making it a dinner time conversation, which is good because our economy is fantastically facilitated by computers.
Mhm.
We're on a live Zoom call right now. We're on a
Yes.
live restream right now. Like, everything is, and we love it, and life is better. And with that comes some duty of care to make sure that whenever we want to get on a call like this, we can.
Yeah. But when it goes away, it's painful. And
Yeah, it's painful
that drives
because
the
we love
conversation.
the convenience, and so should we. Like, this is great. And like in the MSP example there, that's what you're promoting, right? Like, we can make your business run super efficient. You're going to have all this great tools right at your fingertips. You can call anyone right across the country on Restream or the equivalent. We got Teams. Is great. Business is thriving on it, and it's got some responsibility for maintenance and security to make sure it's always up and the information is locked down so that your client's information is also protected. And that's great. And so the news does a great job of bringing it up more at the dinner table. So the more that happens, the better opportunity we all have to talk about it with prospects and existing clients about how we can make it better.
Yeah, that makes sense. We have a question, looks like from someone on LinkedIn. Here we go. Should we start treating computers like a DMV driver's exam? Before you sign up on internet or social media platforms, a basic cyber written test should be administered for pass or fail access.
We're decades away from that. Maybe if we're thinking like 2050 and we're living in the world of Tron, that's going to be a reality. But right now we're still talking about the basics of personal internet hygiene. Like, it would be a stretch to call it cyber hygiene. Let's just call it internet hygiene. Statistically, everyone's still using password as a password statistically. So that's basics number one. Forget about writing an exam. We're just like promoting that in the general awareness that passwords are like your personal defense against losing your information. No one wants to go stand in line to get a new social security number. And to make sure that doesn't happen, got to use good passwords. And this is what a good password looked like. Like we're talking about, bread and butter basics like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the knowledge gap is just so huge, and I think, especially like our clients, MSPs, everyone is. You guys are all here, and the average knowledge, is here, and so that gap needs to close significantly before we're talking about anything like that. I think, which is what you're saying. So to jump into, just in the interest of time, these kind of value offers, and I know, we're going to talk about risk assessments, I think specifically as kind of this value-based offer. And I just wanted to get down and talk about also from our side, from the marketing perspective, like what is a value-based offer? Why is this important?
I think in the simplest way, when I hear value-based offer, I think the prospect perceives what they're getting as more than what they're giving up. It's totally about perception. Since I'm an engineer, we'll go to the value formula. The outcome that they want to get multiplied by the confidence level that they will get it, divided by how much effort they have to put into it and how long it's going to take. The outcome confidence over delay and effort. If you give them something that they really want quickly with low effort, that's huge. They're going to perceive that as huge value.
Yep.
And that's the probably the most important word in that is their perception. And I think honestly in the IT world, that's the part that people are like the seller and the buyer are usually the furthest apart on, is this perception. Because on the supply side of the conversation, when we're pushing out these things, even you were talking about compliance earlier, MSPs love talking about compliance. You got to get compliant. There's, federal regulations, whatever. That's the outcome, getting compliant. The MSP has high confidence they deliver on it. So confidence check mark. Delay and effort might be super low, right? The MSP is really practiced at this. They do CMMC all the time. So if you're an engineering company, they can knock out CMMC easily for you, delay and effort low. But the prospect doesn't perceive this to be an outcome that they care about. Right. And therefore you got a gap. So like value is zero right now, because even though the components of the equation are rock solid, the person on the other end of the phone doesn't perceive that they need this.
Yeah.
And so that's got to play in there. So this whole equation, outcome confidence over delay and effort's got to be multiplied by perception. And then you get the more complete view. And that's the tough part. It's like getting this offer to be perceived as valuable. And often that's just like turning over a lot of rocks, kissing a lot of frogs, and then learning the people that perceive it as valuable.
Yeah. And on our side, I mean, and I have a list of 8 things just to give it tactical, like make sure you're hitting all these things to piggyback, because a lot are exactly what you just said. But I think the big thing is that still that knowledge gap, that education piece, that it's the perception. Like if they're not perceiving this as a needed element to their business, you're going to have a long, long way to go. But we had, let's see, just in my notes, clear value prop, clearly articulated, quantifiable results. What is this going to do for me on the business side of things? Mitigating risk, cost benefit analysis. How can they, save money? How can they minimize breaches, downtime, something like that? Social proof, I think, is hugely important, because again, if there's not that
confidence, for sure.
Yeah, there's not that awareness and perception, then social proof of like, oh, these other, companies in my industry are doing this. Okay, maybe this is something I should look at. Urgency can be used. Bonus incentives also could be part of a value prop, a value-based offer of like, do this, then you get that. And compliance assurance is just one other piece that we had listed as well, just because that's a big driver for people. But let's get into differentiation, because that's something that always comes up. There's actually, I think now over 50,000 MSPs in the US alone, which is just a ridiculous number.
And the number might even be low depending on who you ask. I think ConnectWise last year's channel con said 90,000.
Oh, really? Okay.
I got the slides. We're going 2 weeks from now. We're going to see their updated numbers. Again, probably a little bit biased, but hopefully they're giving us, like from people that touch ConnectWise.
Yep.
It's getting up there.
That's obviously a big jump from my number.
Mhm.
So I'm going to
Especially if you
use,
start roping in the VC, so like solos.
yes, that's what, right. The
They're
solos, I think the numbers of like the top, over 10 employees or something is very small percentage wise,
Mhm.
but it's all those, yeah, one-offs that build that number up. Definitely.
That's right.
Yeah.
So the competition is certainly high. I I I saw your prep question about this, and I thought thoroughly on it because it's easy to say there's a ton of competition. You need to differentiate. Okay, said no duh. I think the important thing to remember is i- in this day and age, you're competing for attention. Whether you're competing against another MSP or more likely doing nothing,
Hmm.
you're competing for attention because if m- in most cases, if you're cold calling a small business and they don't have a current provider, like they're DIYing, cousin Jimmy's doing computers for them, you're competing against doing nothing, which puts you in the same bin as like every other problem they have in their life.
Hmm.
And that's really the tough part to be in because not only do you have to convince this small business to choose you as as their IT provider, you got to convince them to get an IT provider, which is a huge hurdle because they've lived their professional lives not having an IT provider. They don't know what they're missing. They know their current pains, but they haven't tried solving it. It's a different case if they have an MSP right now and it's really dropping the ball, you could go in and get it. But if you're competing against doing nothing, you're on the same playing field as every other problem that they have, both
Hmm.
personally and professionally. Because most of the small business owners, like they're regular human beings, they got other stuff going on too.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's a big part of the competition because you're competing for attention, and whether that's sending out postcards, don't even get me started on postcards. It's sending out postcards, cold email, social media, cold calling. You're It's not just MSPs that cold call. You're competing against tons of industries that are cold calling, and therefore, like everyone's on the same playing field competing with you.
Yeah.
And I find that a humbling equal opportunity because everyone's on the same playing field. So
Right.
that's the nature of competition, and that's why we love it and thrive in it because put more skill in, put more effort in, put more conviction, and you can outcompete.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that goes straight into what we talk about on the like multi-touch education side of things, right? It's and please, no one on the call take this poorly, hopefully, but the when we're doing our prospecting and looking at MSPs, the amount of MSPs that either do marketing poorly or not at all is surprising to me, I'll say. And so just from a differentiation perspective, understanding that if we're just talking about cyber services, like the knowledge gap there is so huge, and the way to close that gap is to do uh, enhanced, elevated, educational, value-based marketing, and in relation to today's topic, value-based offers. I think that's just a huge, piece of the puzzle, personally. In addition to, I don't know about specialized services. Do you ever talk to clients about that? About like, I mean, VCSO now is becoming so much more prevalent, or like 24/7, like SOC options, different things like that to say, hey, we do this and the other guys don't. Do you feel any feelings about that?
Well, that comes back into trying to figure out what the demand is from
Hmm.
that particular group. Right? Whether
Yep.
like macroeconomics in university or college, it's a supply and demand equation. We're talking about supply. We love talking about supply because we're on the seller side, but the buyer is the most important mind in this game. So if the type of buyer that you're talking to really values the outcome of having 24/7 SOC and all of that benefit, like they want someone watching their stuff all the time because they really need it and they really need to pay for it. That's a great differentiator. It
Mhm.
only matters if they have the demand for it.
Yep.
And like that's just part of the learning process. I'm still learning. Like we're experimenting with a ton of stuff of what we can provide to MSPs based on what they need. we have things that we sell that no one wants, and they don't get sold that often because no one wants them. Because we
Right.
try push out the supply, no one buys them. There's no demand. Okay, that's dead.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the learning process that you got to go through when you're doing cold calls or when you're trying different marketing campaigns. If it falls flat, great. That's a good experiment because clearly there was no demand for that. Fell flat. Appreciate that's part of the process. Don't let it get you down and keep looking for something else because
Yeah.
maybe it is like 24/7 SOC, or maybe it is a compliance thing. Like maybe there's a good vein right now in this particular industry in upper New York State. They want to hear about compliance. So talk to all of the defense contractors about CMMC. Great. That may work for 12 months and then the theme changes and you got to find something new, but you learn the process of like measuring demand, trying 5 different campaigns, maybe one works, that's your thing, and expect that to be the process.
Yeah. Yep. No, I think that's huge, and that's what we found as well, and we talk to our clients about is just that ability to have a process behind trial and error in a way, because marketing is like, and if just as a blanket statement for all MSPs, if you talk to somebody in marketing and guarantees anything, run, because marketing is not a guarantee. It's just like a lot of pieces in business where you're going to try, but also make sure you're have metrics behind it and you're tracking all of it, right? So you know exactly what's occurring at each stage and when to pull the plug and when to put the gas down. That's a big piece of it as well, I think. And this is a perfect segue because I think topic for the value-based offer is almost like number one on the list, honestly. It's knowing what's not knowing, because I'm going into the guarantee realm, but having something behind like what is going to land and what's not going to land. That's so important coming into it. So that perfect segue into the question of, how do you determine value? How do you determine what they're going to want, from these different areas? And I know, again, we'll get to the risk assessments and the prospecting pieces that you guys do. But any feedback on that, how to actually get some info behind that?
I don't think there's any secret sauce here.
Hmm.
If anyone was coming here for the behind the scenes Wizard of Oz secret, spoiler, there's no secret here. You got to talk to a ton of people,
Hmm.
and you have to write down the notes because that's the only way to find out. There's no like magic mind reading here. The pool of prospects that you have are amorphous and they're changing all the time. What they want changes all the time. And so the only way to find out is by talking to them and asking them and getting them to explain their pain back to you. And then statistically, if you talk to enough people, there will be pains that you can solve. That's
Yeah.
the game here. Like,
Yeah.
and we just need to have enough volume and effort to talk to enough people to get enough in that certain vertical that say, yeah, I got pains that I can solve. Those are going to be your new clients.
Right.
Because
No, that
and then
makes
you learn from it and you can extrapolate. Like if you're talking to all of the accountants in your region and you get a good string of case studies saying, yeah, accountants are really concerned about this right now because the state CPA association send it out in the magazine and telling everyone they got to be aware of it. The safeguards, FTC safeguards, everyone's yakking at them about safeguards. Great. That's what they're concerned about. It's very temporal. You got to jump on the opportunity now and say, hey, I just
yeah.
want to talk to you about how you can get safeguards compliant in 30 days. We got a package specifically for accountants.
Yeah.
And then their mind is going to say, fantastic, because I'm concerned about safeguards because the CPA Association told me I got to figure it out. And I don't know what any of these words mean. So I want the 30-day quick start package. I'm glad you put that in front of me.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work to get to that. But that's, like with numbers, with volume and effort, you find these veins and then you can replicate.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that's so important. And from a kind of tactical and implementation standpoint, I think, we talk to clients about if they're doing like client surveys or anything like that to get, a net promoter score or any other score that they're using, maybe a good time to talk. What are you guys worried about now? Like what are you thinking about? What's coming down the pike on your side of things, talking to your account managers, if you have account managers at all, and they're the ones talking to clients, just, interviewing them in a way internally and saying, what's going on here, just to keep your, finger on the pulse. One other thing from our side is we do look at like keyword research and stuff like that, just because if I can't talk to a bevy of people, like maybe there's an opportunity to just see the data side of it and see, well, what are people searching for recently that are in this market, and then we can potentially use that on the marketing side to create
Totally,
value.
because that's demand, right? Like you're
Right.
getting a measure of
Exactly.
demand, and that's what we got to focus on.
Yep.
Let me shoehorn in with a follow on about asking clients. The net promoter score is a good thing, and it's quantitative. There's a recommendation. Sometimes it doesn't actually happen, but there's a recommendation to do quarterly business reviews,
Mhm.
QBRs. I've heard from a ton of MSPs that that's their chance to do a little recon, sell some more product. Another way to look at it is forego using that call to try and upsell people. Just try and get the client on the phone to hear what they're thinking about. Like don't talk to them about what you sold them. Just try and hear what they're thinking about, because that is gold material
Mhm.
for learning their mindset, because then you can go find more people and say, we serve clients like you. In the last case study, the client was dealing with all this garbage and they used this to solve their problems.
Mhm.
That's a fantastic sales pitch to the next person. So it is handy to try and upsell your existing clients, but if they're willing to get on a half-hour phone call with you, which is hard to do and rare, even in my own experience with my clients, if they're willing to give you a half hour, just listen to what is going on in their life,
Mhm.
because it's going to be going on in other prospects' life. And then that's your sales gold to use with the next person. You
Yeah.
talk about the case study. Try and avoid talking at them about what you did for them and how many tickets. No one cares about that. No one cares. Like no one cares about that. That's just like the vanity metrics that Mark was talking about earlier about we got X number of traffic to the website. Okay, no one's thinking about that. They care about how many clients they got. Or if you're talking to an accountant, like how was tax season? Tax season was great. Everyone can work from home. It was super smooth. Okay, working from home is important. And we were able to do our whatever QuickBooks and it was great. Okay, QuickBooks, super important. That's your mental note, because when you get the next prospect on the phone that's an accountant, you say, what we specialize in, and make sure that all your agents, all your our practitioners can access QuickBooks from their home. That's our specialty. And the prospect will say, yeah, that would be sick. I want that.
Yeah.
No number of tickets required, because like they're not thinking about that. That's never going to enter their mind. So that's one takeaway is if you can get a
Listen.
client on the phone, listen to what they're thinking about their stuff. I do this and I get super lucky when an MSP starts talking to me about. That's why we started these new postcard campaigns. Is someone was talking about their postcards and they were getting low conversion rates. They wanted to have them spicier. And I'm thinking, okay, shoot, yeah, like we do this whole scorecard thing. I can make them spicier. I'm just listening. I didn't even pitch it in the call. I just let the person keep talking. And
Yep.
then I go home and think. And that's huge for an MSP, especially for the salesperson of the MSP, because that's the material that you need so that when you talk to the next prospect, you can show them a value that they will perceive as valuable, right? Because it's got to be perceived by them. So it's got to be in the words that they think about. That's a big part.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so important. And just to play off what you said earlier, like the vanity metrics are vanity. That's exactly what they are. You have to be aligned from that value based offer all the way through the sales channels and everything that you use in order to take what you're learning from listening, as you just talked about, but also to align everything you're doing up with those conversions into clients. So. Yep. I'm going to skip a couple here because I see time wise we're getting tight, and I want to get into risk assessments and kind of more of the bread and butter of what you focus on. So, what are really the key components for you of an effective risk assessment? And how can that be leveraged to gain clients? And I like the typo there. Totally my fault.
This this may this may be a little bit unconventional answer, because probably people are expecting me to talk about like fun tech reconnaissance tools. Let's just go by the definition. For a risk assessment to be effective in achieving the objective, which is getting the prospect to perceive some value in what you're talking about. The hardest part is putting the results in a way that they can understand. That's the hardest part. The easiest part is getting all the technical stuff. Like doing the risk reconnaissance is the easiest part. I do this every day. It's the easiest part. Any of you can, there's tons of tools, there's tons of free tools, there's tons of paid tools, there's my stuff, everyone's got scanning tools. That's super easy. And what's also super easy is it going way above the head of the person that you're talking to, and then it's totally ineffectual because you're going to show them, here's your report card, you suck. And the prospect's going to say, no surprise you'd say that because you're just trying to convince me to pay you.
Right.
Okay, it's ineffective because they don't perceive you as an authority. They don't perceive it as authentic. They have no idea what's written on the piece of paper, and they feel like you're just trying to corner them. So totally ineffectual. The hardest part is communicating that risk in a way that they would actually appreciate it. And we're still trying to figure this out. Like we change our little PDF design all the time. We're doing these postcards with here's my postcard. We're doing these
Very
postcards with scorecards on it. Put this is how many leaked credentials you have. I don't know. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes people take it the wrong way and they get upset. Like I've been working with our clients, and the salesperson will call someone, and the prospect will get upset that, like I say, hey, just tell them you're doing some community outreach because you are. This client's got issues that are totally in the public domain, and at least they should know about it. And the prospect gets pissed because they take it personally, which they should. It is, it's personal, and it could be bad. And it could be perceived because they have no idea who you are on the other side of the phone. And so that part of the risk assessment, total failure, because you can see like no one's aligned. The communication wires are not connected. So that's the hardest part. And it takes practice. We're still practicing it. It takes a lot of failure. We're still failing at it. We do 1,000 of these per week. So we're aggregating lessons quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're on a one-on-one cold call and say, hey, I did a risk assessment, here are the results, and someone blows up at you, that's tough. And that's part of the puzzle here because everyone's a little bit different. Every human being is going to react in a different way. No one likes, the curtain being pulled back and ugly stuff being shown. No one likes that. Some people will react positively if you have enough rapport. So you got to build rapport, use it in the sales process. Say, listen, as part of our process, we're going to do quick risk assessment. These are the things it's going to check. This is what it won't check. This is what you can expect to see. And in most cases, like in the sales process that we share with our partners, we just say, like, you can pretty much guess what the risk assessment is going to be. We're doing 1,000 per week. Each MSP can make a good guess because they know what a small business looks like.
Mm-hmm.
You can make a good guess, and you can even preempt that with the prospect and say, listen, we do a ton of accountants. In your area, you got like 15 employees. We know what your environment looks like. This is what a risk assessment will usually tell you. It's probably going to find this. It's probably going to find this. Probably going to find this. You do a little hypothetical like that and say, what's going to be your reaction if we showed you a risk assessment like that? And that way, you sort of put it off on the side. They don't take it as personally because it's not their assessment, but it's statistical. And you can say, how would you react to that? And you get the conversation going, sort of like a soft open.
Right.
And then if they say, yeah, okay, like that would be pretty interesting to see. And then the gold follow-up here is, how bad is this going to have to be for you to do something about it? Because I don't want to give you a risk assessment so that, like you have nightmares about this and stay up every night and not do anything about it. Because we have a lot of experience. We usually see accountants. We know what you're going to expect. How bad does this have to be for you to do something? And then again, like you're getting all of the meaningful parts of the conversation ahead of the bad personal reaction, and you can have a good talk with them. And if they say, yeah, honestly, I'm never going to pay you $200 a head to do anything about this, say, great, then I don't need to show you the risk assessment. You just keep floating the way you are. You don't want to see this. and leave it hanging like that, but then at least you save time. You save a ton of time, and you save the headache of them blowing up at you, and you achieve the same part of the process, which is to qualify. That when we use risk assessments in the MSP sales process, it's all about qualifying the prospect through the process. It's a sales process. You got to,
Mhm.
notch them down each part of the ladder until they get to the end goal, which is starting of a relationship with you, as much of
Yep.
an end goal as that is. But the risk assessment is part of the process. There can be multiple risk assessments. We could talk about that, but it's part of the process.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can do it even without running the scans, just by talking through it.
Gotcha. No, I love it because it's all about the journey, right? And it's about meeting prospects where they are in that journey. So we see that from the marketing side of like where are they at? What education do they need? What holes do we need to fill? Making sure we're there for each person where they're at again in that journey. But then it continues on into the sales process and into the assessments and all of that of framing it well and making sure that they're comfortable and guiding them really throughout
100%.
their journey. We did have one question from the audience here. What about risk assessments that classify files and then allocate the USD value of risk?
There are a few vendors that do that. I think, Mark, your point about guiding them through the process, that's the way to look at that, because going back to the perception of value, if that if the prospect will look at that report and believe it, then it's effective.
Hmm.
Right? If you say, "Listen, prospect, we're gonna do a scan of one of your computers. We're gonna look for plain text credit card numbers and social security numbers." That's usually what it is, and, like pictures of passports and stuff. That's usually what it pops up. And each one of those is gonna be assigned a dollar value. So every plain text credit card number we find is $500. And that's how we get your risk is approximately $1 million. If you talk that through with the prospect and they say, yes, that would be meaningful for me, then do it. But if they say, I don't believe that, I think that's just, like your fear tactic, then there's not even a point in doing it. You can still talk to them about it and say, we estimate that every plain text credit card we find in a small business computer is worth $500 of potential risk. And if they say, I don't believe you, then there's no point in doing it. But if they say, yeah, I can see that because my clients would be upset and I have fiduciary responsibilities. My state has, even safeguards, puts protections on the duty of care of financial information, part of PII. If they believe that part of the equation, then showing them results of the risk assessment with a dollar value will land for them. And you should do it. And that's Mark's part about education. You got to educate them all the way up this hill before you show them the risk assessment. Because if you just knock on the door and say you got $1 million worth of risk, they're going to say, "No, I don't. I don't even make $1 million a year in revenue. That equation doesn't land for me. There's no point."
Yeah. I mean, that would be honestly the biggest thing that I hope people take away from today is that journey is that, we've gone that route before of like throw that value-based offer at people early on in the journey, and it just doesn't land because they're not there yet. They don't
Right.
understand yet that they need these pieces, whether it's an assessment or any other offer. And they have to get there. You have to guide them to that spot to see it as valuable because you're just going to waste your time. Not only are you going to get less leads out of it, but you're just going to waste your time on those calls because they're going to say exactly that. Like, what are you talking about? That's
Yeah.
ridiculous. Like, get out of here. You're just trying to sell me on
Right.
something. So,
That's the risk. That's the risk with the risk assessments. And I'm saying this as a person who makes risk assessments for a living. That's part of our process. It's a it's a conversational tactic. It's got to be used after the prospect has been prepped to see value in it.
yep.
Because if you just like knock on someone's door and say, "Hey, your business is terrible for cybersecurity," they're gonna say, "I wasn't even thinking about that. Please leave me alone."
Yep.
Like
Um,
then it's useless.
yeah, no, absolutely. I see Ursula has a follow up, but in the interest of time, I'm going to let you, Mike, contact her after the fact, if that's
Right
okay.
on.
Couple last things. I just wanted to see your thoughts on how can an MSP effectively communicate these offers to potential clients who, and this is really what we've been talking about the whole time, but if we could get, tactical with it, I think that's important to say, okay, well, great. There's this journey that they need to be on. How to actually make sure that they're at this spot and get them to that spot when they're not there.
Yeah. It's this is part of the unknown that we got to work through and learn by talking to a bunch of people. I'm going to a small business event tomorrow to continue this process. Like, I go to the small business events in person too, just like my MSPs do, to try and conduct reconnaissance and find out what people are thinking about, because that's how we have to frame the conversation. Like, what are the small business owners thinking about? They're definitely not thinking about cybersecurity. If they are, it's a lay down, and you thank them for calling you. Like, that's the lay down. That's the easy stuff. Like, if they've this is the common saying, with MSPs, like, if they've felt the pain before, they're a good client of mine. Yeah, I know, but that's a lay down because they felt the pain. What we
Right.
got to do is figure out how to get them talking about the pains that they have that are not labeled as cybersecurity pains, but they're labeled as something else. Like, my employees can't work from home for whatever reason, or I can't get this new contract because I don't have this piece of paper. I don't have cyber insurance. I can't get this contract. There's other pains that they have. It's our job as salespeople to figure out what those pains are, get them talking about them, learn what's the underlying cause of the pain, and then figure out how to solve them. And maybe that'll be the product that we sell. Maybe it won't be, and we got to walk away. Maybe it'll be the product we sell, and that's a new client. And it's about talking to a ton of people.
Yep.
I think that's when sales sucks, is when you don't have enough people to talk to. So you're trying to, like, put a square peg in a round hole, and you're trying to sell at someone, and then you say, "Well, they don't get it. They don't get cybersecurity." Yeah, no, they don't get. Of course, they don't get cybersecurity, because that's your thing. It's not their thing, right? Why would we expect them to have it? They don't get it. Of course, they don't
Yeah.
get it. But they have problems that we as IT service providers can solve. So we just got
Yep.
to figure out the problems that they're thinking about and how they're thinking about it, and
Yeah.
position our solution as part of their solution. And then we're working together to solve their problems. And it takes effort and takes conviction. And that's why this sales is tough. But if
Yep.
you do it with enough effort, enough volume, enough conviction, then it gets good.
And I think this is such a great, honestly, conversation between the two of us, because you're talking about that sales side and obviously the assessments and everything. And I feel like our job is to really tee it up for the sales side on the marketing side, right? It's to get that prospect to the mindset of being open to listen to and understand at least some of what you're talking about, right? And so, I think about, we always talk about like the 7-Eleven, where it's the rule of seven, and Google now has 11, which is how many touch points somebody needs now before ever talking to a salesperson. And and it's going up from there. I've heard 13 recently, which is a ridiculously crazy number if you think about it. It's all these different elements that need to come into play to guide them down that journey before they're ready to say, like, oh yeah, that I think you said $1 million, or that number makes sense to me because I know all this already. I've heard these different pieces. I understand it. I was thinking actually earlier, retargeting is another tactical thing that could help on the marketing side, because these people have already been to maybe your cybersecurity services page on your site, and you're saying, okay, they've already seen this, they're already kind of thinking about this. Let's retarget them with that risk assessment offer, and then they'll come back and say, like, yeah, I'm ready for that. I want to be a part of this, and be more open to the conversation. I think focusing on outcomes, tangible outcomes, social proof, as I brought up earlier, providing visuals, different elements that we can do on the marketing side of things to just prep them. That's all we're doing, is guiding them. Just come on, let's get to this part of the journey where you're ready and you're excited about, talking. Not that anyone's that excited, I think, outside of cybersecurity to talk about it, but to get them excited about it in a way of like, this is going to really help my business out in the long run,
Yeah.
from a continuity perspective, from, all these different elements, from a productivity perspective, like all these different things that will help. And so that's how I see it. And that's why, as you were talking about like the sales piece and the assessments and all that, I love it, because I feel like it's got to be this hand in hand kind of synergy between marketing and sales, and getting people to
100%.
this. So
100%. Yeah, it's an evolution of the prospect's mindset, taking them from
love it.
just the stuff that they know to stuff that they know that you can be a part of, right? Like that's the evolution that we got to take them on, because they're just thinking about their problems, as
Yep.
they should. They're thinking about their problems. They have no idea who you are. You have to slowly evolve their mindset to think, and there are solutions for my problems, and this company can be part of the solution. And it's not like a knock on door, get contract type of
Right.
timeline. There's a slow evolution to this because it's a big deal to them. Like no one's going in cold and signing a managed service contract for 3 years. I don't think anyone does that. That'd be fantastic, but I don't think anyone does that because that's a big deal. That's a long relationship, and it's
Yeah.
a core tenet of the prospect's business. So they got to warm up to this idea,
Yep.
and that just means you got to put in the effort and the volume to be part of their mind when they're thinking about their problems.
Absolutely. Last thing, I want to give you a chance to talk about the free prospecting tool because I thought that was
Sure.
pretty cool. So throw that out there for the audience, and then we'll sign off.
So in our process, the it's a transition from the prospect thinking emotionally about their pains to slowly thinking about you solving their pains and then justifying that this is a good decision to themselves. That's a somewhat philosophical way to put it, but tactically, like Ursula was asking about risk assessments and Mark talking about risk assessments, we got a fun thing called the cyber scorecard. It's what you would expect. It's a quick little report card on their public facing cyber risks. It's really a check on their email security, would do a little dark web scan, and website security gives them a litmus test of their hygiene. It's meant to be a conversation starter. It's
Mhm.
not comprehensive. No one's taken that to the bank and booking their CMMC or SOC compliance certificate. It's a conversation starter because it's a great way for you to say, listen, I want to talk to you about cybersecurity. Oh, I don't want to talk about that. Okay, but as for you as an accountant, this is important because all your clients' financial data are protected by passwords. And we did this check, all your passwords available on the dark web. That's not good. And the accountant starts thinking, well, shoot, that isn't good because I really value my clients' privacy because my clients value their privacy. You
Mhm.
start talking about that. And it's really your chance to elucidate more information about their problems. Okay, so we're talking about client privacy. What are you doing right now to keep your client data private? And they start talking. They probably do this with their head because they're not doing anything and they're just trying to think on their feet of an answer to give you. But it's a conversation starter, and that's you use that to drive out their emotional discussion about their pain. We have a more detailed version. You use this little appliance. It does a full vulnerability assessment. That's again meant to help them justify that they got a problem that they should solve. So these are tools in your tool belt as part of the sales process to keep them talking more about their pains and working them through the thought process of saying, I got pains. I really should solve these pains. This MSP sounds like a confident person that can solve these pains for me. Let's do it.
Gotcha. I love it. Mike, I appreciate it. I appreciate your time, your insights. It's been a great conversation, I think, and I hope everyone got a lot out of it and can go from here and set up some great value based offers and check out Iceberg Cyber, of course. Appreciate it. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Have a good one.
See y'all later. Thanks, Ursula, for your questions. And Melanie, I saw you made a comment.